Thank you all for being here tonight. All right. It's 7:02, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I know people are going to be trickling in. Brett, do you mind just keeping an eye on the waiting room? People seem to be coming in just fine, but just in case, so while I'm doing my thing, if you don't mind checking that out. Real quick question, Natalia asked about how do we get credit for attending the workshop for the research thing. We have your information. I give it to my colleague Boots. So if you are attending this workshop for CRISP requirements, Carolina Research Scholars program requirements, my colleague Boots, who does that, will have your name. So you just tell her when you apply that you went to this workshop. All right, with that, we're going to get started. I am going to close for myself the chat and other stuff. Thank you for telling me your favorite your favorite Halloween movies. I don't know what a research movie would be, so that was great. Good to hear about your thoughts on that. My name is Bob Pleasance, and I am the Associate Director for Student Engagement with the Office for Undergraduate Research. And my job is really to work with students and to help students know that research is possible and that it's out there, and to promote it to you all. And to also provide one-on-one consultations and help you figure out how to navigate your research path. So I'll plug that at the end, but I just want to say now we're going to give you some overall thoughts and some ideas. You're going to hear from some faculty and from ambassadors. At the end, I'm going to ask you to do a quick survey. But in general, one takeaway that I want you to have is that our office exists. We're here to support you, and you're more than welcome to make an appointment with us at any time if you want direct consultation. As far as chats, I'll try to keep chat up. So if you have questions along the way, please, you can ask them in the chat box, and as the moderator, I can attend to them and respond. But we may also save some of those questions for the end. We will have plenty of time at the end. So I've got a couple of slides, and then we're going to hear from our panelists. But in the chat, actually, just to get us started and to keep us active, toss out some ideas for why you might want to do research as an undergraduate, either why you personally or why you think other people might want to do research as an undergraduate. So just toss some answers in the chat real quick. Interested in research as a profession? Absolutely. Yeah, I'm seeing too about sort of trying to figure out your career. Stronger CV, yep, for graduate school and or for work. Natalia, who's on fire tonight with her jokes, it's more fun than retail. Absolutely, right? Especially if you can get paid for your research. It's better to have a research job than it is to just work at Ben & Jerry's, which is what I did when I was an undergraduate. Hands-on experience, gain experience for graduate school, a lot of gain experience. Learning skills you don't get from classes. Yeah, all good reasons. Yeah, investigate questions you're interested in solving. Absolutely. Yeah, so y'all know some great answers. I'm not going to read these all because y'all can do that, but absolutely. The other thing that I'll point out about doing research is, Carolina is a top tier research university. So you, in your 4 years as undergraduates here, have opportunities that the great majority of other folks in this country don't have, which is to be able to work with experts in a particular field. So people who are really, really smart and really, really passionate about their subject and know a whole lot. So the opportunity to work with world-class faculty, to learn from them both about the particular topic and also kind of learn the process of research itself is such an amazing opportunity and a really rare one. So it's a great thing to take advantage of while you're an undergraduate. So some advantages, I'm not going to read all these, but essentially all studies show us that students who take part in research walk away with better benefits. And I'll focus in particular on increased student satisfaction, in part because of the things that you mentioned in the chat, right? That the feeling of getting that real world experience, being able to test out a career and figure out maybe I want to do this, and being able to work with faculty is huge. And the increased self-confidence is part of that as well. And I think the reason goes back to what I was just saying. If you think about it, if you're working with these folks who are experts in their field and who are this brilliant, if they're willing to trust you to go do a task in a lab or to go into a database and crunch some numbers, or to go into an archive and look up research for them, whatever the task may be. If they're entrusting you to take part in that research with them and for them, that can really be a huge confidence boost. And I also know that students who work with faculty doing research also have a lot more confidence in talking to faculty. One of the biggest hurdles sometimes is just students sort of thinking, I don't know that I'm ready, I'm not sure that I can talk to faculty. And the seeing students who do research and seeing them even interact with faculty, I can just see a huge difference in their confidence of feeling like they are more, not quite colleagues yet, but they're sort of on that pathway up to being colleagues, and certainly have a more confident and collegial relationship. So real quick slide just to point out that research happens in all the divisions of the College of Arts and Sciences. It may look very different in certain fields, right? So working in a wet lab is very different from doing an ethnography, which is very different from doing a psych survey, which is very different from looking up in a historical archive. But all those things are possible, and research does look different in different departments. Undergraduates also seek out research opportunities across campus. In particular, we have a lot of pre-med students or students who are interested in possibly exploring medicine, who seek out opportunities or pre-dental in the dental school, in the medical school, Lineberger Comprehensive Cancer Center, because they know that people are doing research at sort of these para-university research institutions, and can find great opportunities there. So that's one thing we'll talk about as well, is not just sort of confining your scope and your search to faculty in your department, but maybe looking a little bit farther afield. So super quick, just thousands of students do research every year. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit lower this year because of COVID, and we'll discuss that in a few minutes as well. But there are research experiences and opportunities available in classes, whether it's doing it for course credit or if it's doing it as part of a class where you're doing maybe a class that has research as part of your assignment. But a lot of students do what's called faculty mentored research, where they are working with faculty on their projects. They might be getting paid, they might be doing it for volunteer, they might be doing it for course credit. And I'm going to go over that real quick as well, just to point out one thing that I realized when I was first started doing this job and talking to students is that as an office, when we did presentations, we often didn't actually describe what research meant. So I think student A might have a different conception of what research meant from student B and from student C. And part of that is because research can look lots of different ways, but sometimes each student might think it only looked the way they thought it looked and didn't sort of realize the many different possibilities. So as we mentioned before, part of that is working with faculty within a department, and part of that is working with faculty outside of a department, right? But in most cases, or in almost all cases, it is faculty mentored research. If it's not for a class, but even then, faculty are mentoring students in class projects. So what it typically means is joining a professor's lab, study, or project. And when I say that, it's also important to point out that most of the time when students are doing research at Carolina, they're not necessarily doing their own research, meaning they don't have to come up with the investigative question or create a lab experiment, or design an experiment or design a survey. There are times when they do, certainly, but most cases, if students start to do the second point there of design their own research study, they have done work with faculty first to learn that process and learn how to do that. So sometimes students are too intimidated to get involved in research because they think, I don't have the skills and experience yet, and I don't know how to, do research. But many students join a professor's lab, study, or project with almost no experience and learn through the faculty. So just to point out that in a lot of cases, when we say doing research, it does mean supporting faculty in the faculty research, or the postdoc research, or the grad student research, as much as students designing their own experience. That also varies by field. Again, in an English class, for example, or a history class, students still might support faculty research, but they might be able to do something that's more their own. Or in anthropology class, they might have the qualitative skills to be able to go out and do a brief ethnography that would be their own research project. But in biology, for example, it's probably not that you're going to have your own lab, obviously, or come up with a novel, you know, cell biology project, for example. And then lastly, just to point out that it really varies as far as students doing work voluntarily for academic credit and getting paid. Probably the minority of students get paid. It's less likely that students get paid, primarily because faculty don't have the resources and money to do that, or if they do, they're often paying their graduate students first. Plus, oftentimes students are approaching faculty and saying, "Can I work with you?" And it's sort of hard to say, "Can I work with you?" and "Hey, can you pay me as well?" Because maybe they, don't have that funding, but they might say, "Well, I don't have funding, but I'm willing for you to work with me if you want to volunteer." Most of the time, or hopefully, however, students aren't volunteering for so long or for more than about a semester without getting an academic credit for their work. So in almost every department, or if not every department, there is an opportunity for students to do research for course credit. Biology or for psychology, for example, it's a 395 class. So just know that if you are volunteering with the faculty or even outside of your department, you do want to start to explore if you can do a 395 class or a research intensive course to get course credit later on, so that you can kind of carve out that time and not have to do things on top of your regular schedule. All right, I have a couple more slides just to go over some basics, and then we're going to hear from our student panel. So just kind of a quick note, and we'll answer lots of questions about this at the end. I don't want to talk at you too long. I want to have this be more informal and Q&A. But research opportunities are, of course, harder to find in the time of COVID, especially wet lab work. Obviously, with restrictions in labs and physical distancing that has to happen, a lot more faculty are having to cut the number of people who can be in their lab. And usually if it's a matter of unpaid undergraduates versus paid graduate students who are also using that work for their master's thesis or PhD, they can't cut the graduate students, and they're going to have to prioritize having them in the lab over undergraduates. So that said, there are plenty of students who are still working with their faculty, and the faculty are keeping them on and finding them ways to get involved. But the newer opportunities are not quite as abundant as they typically are. We'll talk in a few minutes about how to kind of get around that, or how to not see that as a defeat right now. But there are still things that are happening, and it's still worth pursuing and talking to faculty. So my last kind of 4 slides here are going to be some quick advice about how you can get started. So first of all, take a research class. In your major or in some other majors, you can look and you can see in the course catalog, they're not always sort of marked super clearly. There's not a R like there is an EE credit, for example, say it's a research course. But if you look at course descriptions and you look at what's offered every semester, there are courses in almost every department where you're doing possibly research methods, right? So maybe you're learning statistical methods, maybe you're learning ethnography, as far as quantitative and qualitative examples. There are research exposure courses and research related skills courses where you're either learning research skills, like how to do research in an archive or do historical research. And then in research exposure courses, you're usually doing, I think it's a third of your final grade has to be based on doing some kind of research project. So built into the class is that you are going to be doing some kind of research as part of the class. I think it might be Psych 212 or 210. Dr. Vijay Sathi's class, for example, is a class where she does a great job of helping students learn stats or psych stats by doing projects and doing research together, and coming up with results from that work. So research classes are a great way to get started and to build your confidence. I'll also point out in a lot of classes, a lot of the research postings recently, I see things like, you need to know Excel or you need to know Python. So classes where you can learn different statistical or computer skills can be very helpful in helping you be a better candidate for working on certain research projects. Looking for postings, believe it or not, a lot of things come through department listservs. So I know people sometimes feel like listservs are things that you just want to delete and you aren't super excited about, but know that a lot of things come through listservs, and a lot of faculty who are looking for research support in their department just pop something on a listserv and get volunteers and even paid researchers, undergraduate researchers that way. And believe it or not, when we are doing class IRL, there are research boards around, or bulletin boards around departments, and people still are very old school and will put up things looking for research opportunities, tear off a piece of paper and email people. And then we also have a database of research opportunities. It's not quite as full this semester as it has been in the past, but it's good to browse, get an idea of what's out there, and to see what's available. And in addition, if you see something that's posted, it's still also sometimes worth it to email folks and say, hey, I realize it's probably filled right now, but I'm really interested in the research that you're doing. Can we talk about subsequent semesters and how to get involved in the future? The last thing I'll say about looking for postings and applying is that you really want to have your CV or your resume ready, and you might have to tweak it, slightly depending on the posting, but you want to have that ready to go. And you also want to have a template for a cover letter. Obviously cover letters should be different for whatever you're applying for. You always want to tailor your cover letter to what they're asking for and the skills and backgrounds that they want to see. But my point is, you don't want to wait 2 weeks when you see something come through a listserv and apply for it 2 weeks later. If something comes through a listserv, you want to apply for it within a day or two, especially if it's coming through a biology, psychology listserv when thousands of students are seeing that. If you wait 2 weeks, your application's not going to be read. Occasionally people will say, here's the deadline, and get it in by then. But I've talked to so many researchers who are they want to get it done, and they've said, here, can you put this on your database? And then 2 days later they say, I found somebody, can you take it down? Because that's how quickly they got applications, and that's how quickly they were able to hire somebody. So don't hesitate if you're interested in postings that come around. This is the one slide I want to spend just a minute or two on, and this is one that's really important, I think, and I think you'll hear this from our panelists throughout the rest of this evening. But network, network, network. And when I say network, I know some of you think that it has kind of a skeevy, whatever the word is, sleazy vibe of like, oh, I'm gonna really have to put myself out there and try to use other people to get what I want. That's not what networking is about, or it shouldn't be what it's about. Networking in academia is asking professors about their research, asking other people about what they're doing, following your intellectual curiosity and finding people who are doing the work that you're intellectually curious about and trying to talk to them about that. So I guess I'll say two things. One is never be afraid to cold email professors or other students who are doing research that you're interested in. Your emails, however, should not be framed as, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I want you to give me an opportunity, or I want you to give me a job, or I'm looking for something that's going to help me get into medical school. Whether you say that explicitly or not, sometimes emails come across that way. Instead, if you convey to them that you're an undergraduate looking for an opportunity, and you were trying to figure out who on campus is doing cool work in this field, and you came across their lab or their project, and you got super excited, and you'd love to talk to them more about doing research in this field, and maybe get some advice on how to get involved in research in general, that's a much different email, and you're going to have a much higher yield rate of people applying. Because what happens all too often is students want to get involved in research. They create kind of a form-seeming email. They send it to 50 people, and they say, I sent out 50 emails and I didn't hear back from anybody, because their emails were generic and they weren't sort of focused on the particular thing that people are doing research in. So what's more important is that you show that you're passionate about what people are researching, and you're asking them to talk to them because you're just curious, and also you're potentially asking them for mentorship or advice, because people are generally flattered if you say, hey, you're doing cool work and I think you're smart and want you to tell me how to maybe get involved in this thing, right? And so the other thing that happens is if they don't have an opportunity immediately, they're still more likely to email you back. If your email conveys, I'm just looking for an opportunity right now, if people don't have opportunities, they're not going to respond to your email. If you're asking for a conversation, curiosity, more information, advice, and you're showing that you're passionate about this thing, you're much more likely to have people who are willing to respond and speak with you about their research. So again, I think you're going to hear more of that from our panelists. So I'm going to not keep harping on that, but it's a really important point. And our office can also help give you advice about how to go A, find people who are doing work you're interested in, and then B, help you craft good emails to reach out. Lastly, and then we're going to turn over to our student panel, is connect with us. Again, look at our website. It's our.unc.edu. And sign up for our newsletter. You can see that on the website as well. Connect with our faculty liaisons in every single department, or almost every single department. We have faculty who are willing to meet with students and talk to them about what it's like to do research in statistics and geography and women's studies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they can give you good department-specific advice about how to get involved and what kind of paths to take. And even if you're not sure yet, just reach out to them about kind of making that plan. Same thing for our student ambassadors. You're going to hear from a few of them in just a few minutes. But we have 25 students who do research, who love to hear from their fellow students and are happy to give advice. So take advantage of them. It's also happened in the past on occasion that somebody's reached out to a student ambassador and say, hey, I love what you do. They talk to them more about it. They maybe volunteer once or twice, and that student ambassador graduates and says, hey, PI, why don't you hire this person, right? So that's another way to possibly start networking and getting involved. And then lastly, make an appointment. You can make an appointment with me via our website or by emailing me. I'm happy to sort of talk to you more specifically about how you might get involved and how you might make a plan for yourself. All right, I am mostly on time here. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our student ambassadors. We have a wonderful panel of students who are doing research. I think they are all here. I can't quite see the participant list at the moment. But I'm going to start, and we'll just go in order if it's okay. Avery, I did see that you're here, so I know that you're here. So Avery, if you can start by telling us, we know your name and major already, but your year and where you're from. And then if you can start with the research that you're doing and how you found it. We'll start with that, and then I'm going to ask you all another round of questions. But if you can, again, where you're from, what you the research that you're doing and how you found it. Thanks, Avery.
Hi, everyone. So I am a junior from Eden, North Carolina, and I do research broadly in cognitive psychology. So some psycholinguistics, some learning and memory, and then some neuroimaging. I'm kind of all over the place right now. But I definitely got a lot of experience, or one of my first experiences through cold emailing, like Bob was talking about. So I found a professor whose work I was super interested in and just reached out saying, I love your work. I'd love to learn more about it. We met and I got a volunteer position through that. And I've been working in that lab ever since. And then because of my experience there, I've had the opportunity to explore other fields within cognitive psychology. So it's been a really helpful experience for me.
Thank you. Brett.
Yeah, hi friends. My name is Brett Harris. I'm a double major in comparative literature and European studies with a minor in urban studies and planning. I'm from Freeburg, Illinois, and this is my senior year. And currently I'm writing an honors thesis, kind of using object-oriented ontology to kind of help discover kind of what roles objects play in creating afterlives inside of literary works, if that makes sense. And Bob says, no, this doesn't make sense. I kind of found my advisor. First, I took a course with them, and then I took another course, and they were like, hey, would you mind researching trees in Lolita? And I said, sure. And so like for a semester, I was like reading these really weird like pseudoscience books about the meanings of trees, and all kinds of stuff. And then I wrote a paper on it. And then when I needed an advisor, I was like, hey, would you mind? And they were like, absolutely. And I was like, perfect, thank you. So that's, yeah, how I got where I am, the short story.
Awesome. The object-based ontology and the afterlife doesn't make immediate sense, but I am intrigued for sure. It's the beautiful thing about English majors. All right, Nivi, are you here?
Yep, I'm here.
Hey, Nivi.
Hi. So, hi everyone, my name is Nivi. I'm a sophomore from Charlotte, and right now I work in a psychiatry lab with ferrets, and we're doing something called transcranial alternating currents. So, in simple terms, we're giving them like positive and negative currents in different parts of their brain and trying to create an electric field to like synchronize neural networks. And the way I got my position, so first I actually found my lab on the database of undergraduate research opportunities, and I emailed them the summer before my freshman year and got no response. And then like 2 or 3 months later, I found the lab again through the psych and neuroscience department. They had a psych and neurofest, and some labs were talking about what they were doing. So I saw my lab again, and then I emailed them again. And this time, yeah, they said I could come in for an interview, and I like read a lot of my PI's papers beforehand so I could talk about it. And I think he liked that. So yeah, that's how I'm there now.
Thank you. And Nivi, you're a sophomore, right? I love the neural synchronization. Is that what you said? See, neural synchronization of ferrets. If you're like me, I've heard Nivi talk about her research before, but every time she says that, I imagine that she sort of somehow uses neural synchronization to synchronize ferrets to do some kind of ferret dance. I'm sure it's not what she does at all, but it's fun to think about. Sneha.
Hi, I'm a junior. My name is Sneha. I probably should switch that. I'm majoring in biology and neuroscience, and I work at a neuroscience lab called the Anton Lab. My work is somewhat similar to Nivi's. My lab researches neural circuits, but in mice, and how genes and mutations in those genes can contribute to diseases like Alzheimer's and Asperger's syndrome. Um, I got into research as a paid intern, and then I volunteered, and now I'm doing a Bio 395 course with my lab. So I've kind of done like all of them. Yeah, I also got into my lab through reaching out to various professors and PIs and kind of writing specific emails about like the work that they were doing and how that intrigued me. So yeah, that's how I got into research.
Thank you, Sneha. And Sriya, who's had 2 tests today. So thank you for being here, Sriya. Sorry, Sriya.
It's totally fine. It's no problem at all. Hey, y'all. My name is Sriya. I'm a junior. I'm from Cary, North Carolina, so I live pretty close to UNC. And I do research in a cardiology lab that's like part of the McAllister Heart Institute and the School of Medicine. And what I study is a couple of it's a protein and something called a chemokine, which is involved in infection. And we are studying those 2 things in mice models to see whether their presence or absence will kind of help in the development of heart disease, because heart disease is the leading cause of death in the US right now. So no bueno. I got my experience by the biology listserv because yeah, I'm a bio major. So Dr. Schimmer will occasionally time to time send opportunities there. I like interviewed with another like pulmonology lab or something before that. And the PI basically told me I was like too young to come back another time. So yeah, and then I interviewed with the current lab that I'm with now. And I've been there since.
Thank you. Sriya just mentioned Dr. Giddy Schimmer, by the way, and if you haven't signed up already, just a quick note that tomorrow, I think it's at 5 o'clock. Is that right, folks? Dr. Shimmer is presenting a particular workshop on getting involved in biology. So if you haven't seen him present on that, that'll be super valuable as well. So look on the URW University Research Week website for more information about that. I'm going to open it up to the panel now, and I'll let y'all do this free form. I'm not going to call on you all. Can kind of piggyback off of one another to talk about what advice you have for getting involved based on your own experience, or also from working with your mentees or other research, other students you've worked with, about what advice that you would give for getting involved in research.
I guess I can go ahead and start. So for me, a lot of it has been kind of classwork and building relationships, as Bob kind of mentioned earlier. For example, initially I was going to do my honors thesis with this one professor, and Dr. Lithgow, who you're going to be hearing from later today. And I asked her, I was like, hey, I'm really interested in doing an honors thesis. How do I go about doing that? She's like, go talk to this guy. You'll get along great, and and like you have really similar interests, and that'll be a great thing. So I took a class with him, and I asked like in the first week, and I was like, hey, I know it's really early. Would you mind advising my thesis? And he was like, yeah, sure. And he's like, but you'll want to go ahead and take this other course that he also taught. And so it was, a little scary, but also really helpful, like thinking about like instead of a cold email, like I kind of had that connection a little bit already. And then when things ended up falling through with him, he gave me a list of people to contact, being like, hey, I know this kid, me, and you might be interested in doing research with him. And so I was able to reach out to people with that way, and kind of utilize other people's networks as well to kind of grow from that.
Something I will say that kind of addresses a question that was just asked in the chat about what to do if you don't have much research experience already, is just start applying for things even if you don't think you're that qualified. Professors are really open to accepting young students who don't have a lot of experience because they can train them, teach them all the like softwares, programs, etc. that they need, and you'll be able to be in the lab for a long time, which is really nice. One of my jobs, I have to make animations, which I'd never done before, but I still got the job and I was taught it. And so now I'm like the animation person. And so don't be afraid to apply to things that you think are like out of your wheelhouse. Just give it a shot. And if it doesn't work out, that's okay.
Sometimes principal investigators are in a good way have slight control issues, right? Where they want to be able to say, this is how we do it in this lab. And so I like having a new little baby over here to shape and mold into how we do it in our lab. So sometimes lack of experience can be seen as an asset because it can be shaped into the way that they operate in that particular lab.
Something I was going to say was, and I think someone asked this question in the chat, but that if you're interested in like STEM as well as social sciences, I will say there's research being done on like every avenue. I know one of the other ambassadors, she does research on like sleep, which I think is really cool. And so one of the best ways to kind of find something that might be in your niche is the websites for the subjects or the major department that you're looking at. So there's pretty much research being done on everything. I know I was in a psychology lab before I went into neuroscience. And you might not like the first lab that you get into, you might not like the research being done, or you might really like it. So it's definitely important to keep trying different things and find something that you like. And someone else asked a really good question about like reading PI's papers. I definitely had that same question when I was reading PI's papers because I did not understand anything. It's a very high level kind of paper that they're doing, really specific on some receptor in bio or something. You don't need to understand everything. It's just to kind of understand what research the PI is roughly doing and have like an avenue to kind of initiate conversation and express your interest in like what they're doing. So like just kind of knowing like a broad overview is good enough. Like they will not expect you to know and understand everything in that paper.
Yeah, and just to go off of like actually both of those questions. So I think the first one you were also, or Natalia was talking about doing like two kinds of research. And I have friends that are doing like two labs, but at the same time, like both of those labs are only maybe like 6 to 8 hours a week. And so if you're gonna do two labs, you have to keep in mind that like they're both a time commitment. And like right now with my lab, it's 15 hours a week, but I end up staying for like 20 to 24 a week. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're going to try and get into like two labs or do research in two areas. And also about like talking to your PI. So like when I went in for my interview, like yeah, the papers are really complicated and I felt like I didn't understand a lot, but I knew that like one of his projects was like with music, and like he was getting people in like an orchestra to like play, and he had like EEGs connected to their brains and was trying to see if like their brains were all synchronized. And as someone who plays the violin, I kind of talked to him about that. I was like, oh, I do this, can you tell me more about that paper? So it's not like I really understood everything and had like a deep conversation with him, but I kind of like pointed out that like, hey, like I have looked at your stuff, which shows that like, you know, you are actually interested in their work. It's not like you're just looking for a random opportunity.
And it's just really important to be able to have the soft skills to talk to faculty with confidence. So again, sort of instead of being like, this person knows everything and I shouldn't be here, to just say, you know, to own when you know things and don't know things, but to ask good questions, to maybe say, hey, I'm a newbie to this. I'm brand new, especially if you're first year, rather than trying to fake it and pretend like you know more than you do. Say, hey, I'm brand new. Can you tell me how to chart a path over the next 4 years? They might be very excited to say, wow, here's somebody who's going to be awesome as a junior to be in my lab. They might not be able to take you before that, but they might give you advice on how to get there. A couple of other just quick questions, but just because they're coming hot and fast here, want to address them. And ambassadors, shout if I've missed something. But earlier, Natalia asked about sort of doing something in both majors. An example might be maybe you have a anthropology major and a biology major, and maybe you're able to do a research project such that you're able to do interviews to sort of figure out how people perceive a certain medical issue, right? So it's relevant to biology, and maybe if you're pre-med, for example, and but you're also able to sort of use anthropology and sort of interview-based qualitative research skills to understand. I mean, I also get there's an medical anthropology major that it covers the intersection of those two things as an example, but really anytime you use qualitative research as, you know, for example, you can ask lots of questions in different fields that might be relevant, that might not be what you typically do as far as lab work. So there's different ways to be creative about that. You can't get double credit, right? I mean, you might have to sort of work out and figure out how to get credit in one place or the other, or both if you double up somehow, but that is possible. I feel like there was one more question that I was going to try to answer. I don't know if anybody, if ambassadors, y'all saw something that I missed right now. Oh, the question about a follow-up email. Yes, it's appropriate to send a follow-up email to faculty if you haven't heard back from them. Ambassadors, have y'all had to do that? Do you have any particular advice? I've got some, but if y'all had to send follow-up emails, then would you?
I mean, just be friendly, but also, I mean, like, I'm like, hello, you know, like just, I mean, I almost act as if I'm sending the same email again a little bit, just because I'm like, I always feel very paranoid about being like, in my previous email, because then I'm worried that I'm like sounding snarky. So, I mean, just, you know, tailor it a little bit. Like, you'll probably know the tone.
Yeah. Can always forward the original email as well and say, dear Professor so-and-so, I recognize that you must be incredibly busy. So maybe you didn't, maybe you didn't have a chance to read or respond to my email, and I understand. However, I'm still interested in speaking with you if you have the time. Another sort of quick piece of advice is often by saying, if you, especially if it's a lab, for example, if you or somebody in your lab, right, or you or somebody who works on your project, as another parallel example, that also opens up the opportunity for them to say, hey, let me kick them to my postdoc or a graduate student or somebody else. And that's not a bad thing necessarily to kind of get, sent down the chain one notch, because that can still open up doors and give you good connections. But yeah, and I usually say give it a week and a half to 2 weeks. Send one follow-up email, and then after that, don't keep pestering people, because if you send emails, inevitably there are going to be people who don't respond, and that's okay. So don't feel for yourself. Can you hear the acorns falling in my house? By the way, let's come under attack. Squirrels here are crazy, in case you're wondering. Don't take it personally if you don't hear back and you send emails, because inevitably people are busy and forget. So don't feel bad. Somebody asked how and where. Yeah, to find various professors are doing to be able to email them. Faculty pages, yeah, department list of faculty can be very helpful. So definitely spend time on your faculty web pages and look. If you are bio majors, I don't know, can one of you ambassadors help me by tossing in, if you know, that BBSP or PS, whatever it's called, link. There's a great link if you're a bio person looking for bio or biomedical opportunities. We host it in our listserv, but it's kind of sneaky because it's mostly made for graduate students looking for opportunities, but it's a great tool for undergraduates who are trying to look at various biological and biomedical opportunities. And it helps you to see outside of the biology department, for example, about what's available there. Any last advice from students? And we're gonna have more time, but as far as how I've allotted time and invited faculty in, I wanted to start with them in the next minute or two. So any last advice from, thank you, Sriya. Any last advice from students before we go to faculty?
I think that there's one thing that a few of us mentioned when we were talking about how we found our opportunities, which is on the Office of Undergraduate Research website. They have a database, which is kind of like a compilation of it wasn't really used as much when I was a freshman, but it's being used a lot more now, where PIs and labs that have open positions will post kind of their little spiels about projects and stuff that they need people for. And then from there, you can kind of filter it based on whether it's paid, volunteer, like for credit. I definitely search there a lot to find opportunities. So I think that's definitely a great resource for you guys to check out.
And a lot of them will be taken right now, but if you email to show that you're interested and that that it's probably not open right at the moment, but you're still like that interested that you wanted to reach out to them, it's a great way to maybe get an early in and talk to them. So don't approach it again as like, do you have something right now? If not, don't worry about me. But saying that I found your research project and it sounds really cool. Can I ask you some questions? I might be interested in the next couple of semesters. Again, maybe they're like, you know what, it'd be a lot easier for me to just have somebody who's ready now and not have to post and interview people. So maybe you have a good conversation and next thing you know, they say, yeah, can't do it in the spring, but if you want to do it next fall, like it's you. So don't hesitate. All right. Hopefully some of the ambassadors can stick around. I told Sriya to leave because she has had 2 tests and she's going to do some self-care. So please peace out if you have to, Sriya. And thank you for letting me embarrass you by calling you out. So thank you. And thank you all, ambassadors. So we're going to move to the faculty panel. Hopefully all my faculty are here. Again, it's hard to move slides and see who's here. But what I'm going to do is ask them to introduce themselves and their particular area of research. We'll just go in order, but I'm asking them to introduce themselves, their area of research, and then an example of how they've worked with an undergraduate in having undergraduates support their research, or in some cases supporting undergraduates and the research that they're doing. Dr. Delamato, are you here?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'll let you start.
So, hi everyone. My name's Paul Delamater, and I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Geography, and I study what's called health and medical geography as my kind of subfield. I've been very busy studying COVID since all this started happening, but I study infectious diseases, and I also study access to healthcare and interactions with the healthcare system. And so what's going on right now is kind of brought all of my research that I've done over the years together in an amazing way. I actually love working with undergrads on research. And I think it was because when I was in undergrad, I was in a department of geography where they didn't have a grad program, and so all the research assistants were undergraduates in that department. And so I have worked many times with like SURF, with the summer undergrad research. I work all the time with students during the semester. I advise honors theses. I've done that since I've been here. I just try to get involved, and a lot of times for me, I heard some of the conversation about like emailing and stuff. Some of it has started as emails. Others have just been people in my class that were really interested in what we did, and and I'm always open, especially when people ask me like, do you have anything that I could help with? Because often what we're looking for as professors is a little bit of support with some of the more tedious stuff sometimes. And so a lot of times we'll ask you to do things that aren't the most fun at the beginning and kind of build into the role. But yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you. And I'm just going to comment on one thing that Paul said, and that's talking to your professors and just chatting with them about their research. What I often say is you don't want your first conversation with a faculty to be interviewing for a position, right? You're going to be nervous. You're not going to be ready. So you want to have that experience of just being able to sit in office hours, Zoom or in person, to say, hey, can you tell me a little bit about what you research, and then to get comfortable chatting. So that's great advice. Thank you.
And if you know faculty, you know that we love talking about our research. So
it's a true story, right? People, this is stuff that people have decided to spend their whole life researching, right? So that's why we keep harping on, show that you're passionate, show that you're interested, because people don't want to work with students who don't really care about what they are researching, right? It's a huge sort of amount of trust to give to students. So they really want students who care, not students who are just looking for something to be a resume filler. Dr. Fitting, same questions. If you talk about your research and how you've worked with students in your research or their research.
Hi, Sylvia it is. I am in the psychology and neuroscience program in the department. I started there 2015, so I'm an assistant professor, and I do teaching as well as on the undergrad level as well as the graduate level. And of course, I also do research. And similar to Paul, we love to have undergraduate students in our lab. We actually do in vitro research, which means that we look at the single cell level using mouse models, but we also do behavioral work with mice. And especially with behavioral mouse work, we use undergraduate students that get acquainted with mice by weighing them, body weight, they handle them, and then they actually take part in projects where they put them in operant conditioning chambers and look at certain type of behavioral responses. And so what we also do with undergraduate students is, of course, they get involved in our lab meetings. Some of them actually are Psych 395 students, which means they can get credit actually participating in our lab research. And that is a really great opportunity for students to get involved as well. What we like to do is we like to have students first semester without for the student to take credits, just because we want to see whether the student is interested in the type of research. And then we start, of course, giving them an opportunity to work with us for credit. And it can even go so far to actually for students to get work with us as an honors thesis project. I did have a student that I was teaching in my biological psychology class that came to me and told me that he's really interested in research, and he wasn't sure if he would want to work with humans or with mouse models. And sitting together with him in office hours, we talked about my class as well, but we also talked about his research interest, and we kind of figured out that his his how do you call it, whatever he's interested in didn't really fit with my research, but I knew a professor who actually was working in the field that he was interested in. And so I encouraged him to try to actually send an email to the professor, and he was able to get in, and he did his honors thesis with this professor. And we actually worked, talked together. At the very end, I was on his honors thesis as well. And so, I'm supporting undergraduate students, but if you don't fit, I'm trying to help you to find, another researcher as well.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Sylvia. I don't think, Frank, are you here? All right, Hillary, same question to you.
Yep, I'm here. I'm not quite sure.
Is your cat here today?
She is napping in the back here, so I won't change my camera. But yes, she's my faithful cat. She gets very concerned when I sit in front of the computer too long. So my name's Hillary Lithgow. I teach in the Department of English and Comparative Literature, and my research started out 19th century British literature, and then now I do mostly literature of war, and that sounds like two really different interests, but they're connected. My real interest is the way people who think that the way they write a sentence should change because of things that they've experienced in their lives, specifically like experiences where their moral codes are violated, but other ones too. I'm just really interested in people's style, literary style, and the way that experience shapes it, and that connects 19th century Brit Lit and literature of war. But I don't actually do that much research. I'm really more of a teacher than a researcher, and my biggest passion is kind of humanities outside the university. So I've had students work on all of those issues. Mostly I facilitate students to connect with research opportunities with other faculty, because as Dr. Pleasance was saying, it looks different in the humanities. A lot of times it's, a professor you meet in class and you talk with them, and they either, as I did with Brett, connect them up with other professors who have similar interests, or, you're working with a professor in class. I had a student who was working on white supremacy, like blogs in an African-American literature course, and she and the professor were both working really hard on these blogs, and they ended up, she's supporting the faculty member's research. So you do sometimes have cases in the humanities where a faculty member is doing research and takes on a student assistant to help with that research process, just as Dr. Pleasance was saying. But other opportunities in the humanities really are within the courses, doing an honors thesis or doing a summer undergraduate research fellowship. And as we were saying earlier, a lot of times humanists get to define their own question. And I just want to sort of say real briefly what that looks like, because it is kind of different from what we've been talking about, but it has a fairly common structure, which is in common with the other disciplines. And that is, you have a question you're asking. What could William Wordsworth teach us about protecting watersheds? Or what does the metaphor of the fight and the battle for cancer, how does that shape the experiences that patients have when they're dealing with cancer? Or, what does this novel teach us about women's anger that we might not learn from other works of art? Any question you have, the basic structure is you have your question, you look and you figure out what other scholars have said about it, and you take your own place in that conversation so that you both have a literature review section, just as you would in the social sciences and the natural sciences, and then you contribute to it your own position. So I think that's, I do a lot of just kind of, you might get along with so-and-so. There was a question in the chat, I'm not sure we got to it, but somebody asked, like, how do I even find out what faculty are interested in? Maybe that question got answered already, but it doesn't hurt to answer it again, which is just looking on the websites of departments. Not all websites are created equal, but a lot of them do list somewhere research interests of faculty, and a lot of them are searchable, and you can put in a keyword. And once you start seeing it and getting excited, like people were saying earlier, networking changes from this dirty word to something really positive and exciting, namely talking to other people who are excited about the same things you are.
Yeah, thank you. In addition to searching, like you said, I think implying, but making explicit the fact that networking, that if you talk to people and you tell them, you'll start figuring out, and you'll start working the faculty networks, and people are excited. I love when I talk to a student and they say, I want to do this, and I'm like, I know the person. Like I get just jazzed up about the fact that I can say, go talk to them, or in some cases, like I'll send them an email and because I know they're happy to talk to you, and then connecting them and seeing both those people then get excited. So thank you also for that wonderful answer about kind of cross-disciplinary or interdisciplinary work, because that's so true. And some of the best work really, a lot of the best work doesn't necessarily fit squarely into any kind of disciplinary boundary. So
yeah, and
great.
for better and for worse, the humanities, sometimes stalk in other people's territory.
That's right. That's right. Thank you. Dr. Lorenzo, can you talk about your research, please, and working with undergraduates?
Sure. So, hi everyone. So, I'm Damaris Lorenzo. I'm an assistant professor in the cell biology and physiology department that is in the School of Medicine. I have been in UNC for a little bit over 4 years. And during that time, we have trained over 13 or 14 undergraduates in the lab. And we currently have 7 undergraduates. So we love working with you. And we're always looking forward to having you in the lab and help you sort of navigate your time in UNC and also preparing you for your next step. So my lab is sort of divided, which is sort of interesting. So half of the lab works in neuroscience. So we studied neuronal biology in the context of disease, mostly neurodevelopment and also neurodegenerative diseases. That's one half of the lab. And in the other lab, we studied how nutrients affect development in the brain and whole organism development. And we do that in mouse models. But we also try to understand how changes in nutrient intake, either under or overnutrition, can lead to diseases such as obesity, diabetes, and other different metabolic diseases. So we try to recruit undergraduates early on. That's very important for us. So we try to use every opportunity available, put it in the website. So I have established collaborations with professors who teach a lot of the undergraduate classes, especially in the biology and chemistry major. And every time that we have an opportunity to bring an undergraduate to the lab, we reach out to them and tell them, distribute this among the undergraduates who are taking your classes. And this is sort of solicited openings, but we are also, always open to read your emails and, just answer to you when you have an interest in trying to learn more about the work we're doing. Sometimes it is not possible to give you an opportunity right away, but we always keep it in mind. So my advice is that if you are really interested in one specific type of research or a lab, keep insisting, learn about the work, network with the members of the lab, maybe reach out to other undergraduate students that you might know who could be in the lab, and try to keep insisting on that. So in the lab, we have undergraduates at every level and in every capacity. So we have undergraduates who have taken the class for credit. That is very common. We have undergraduates who come as volunteers, and also a lot of undergraduates who started as a volunteer and then they apply for fellowships, and now they're doing their research supported by different type of grants.
Thank you. I really like what you said about sort of being persistent and keeping up, right? That you might have to keep working to find what you want, but you can get there. I think a lot of times students are so worried about getting a position, they'll sort of take anything or sort of ask very broadly, as opposed to really holding out or being planful about it, right? To realize that maybe if I start asking and networking as a first year or a sophomore, I'll get there, right? I gotta ask the right questions, and I might have to take this class or read this book first, or get trained to do this one thing. But if I really want to do this thing, I can get there. It might just sort of take somebody helping me design the map and doing some extra work for it.
And do not be afraid. Do not be hesitant to apply for a position because you think that you have no experience. We all started without experience, and indeed, if you apply early, it's the best opportunity. So you can acquire some research skills, and then start becoming fluent with everything that is being done in the lab. And then, if you do well, if you really are very motivated, then you will get your individual research project, and then you can develop that during the time in the lab, and hopefully You could participate in meetings and contribute to publications in the lab, and then learn about research, which is the most important thing. So experience sometimes is important, but if you start early, we're here to train you.
Thank you. And then finally, Dr. Meyer Davis. Thank you.
Yeah, so most of what I would have highlighted by way of the process has already been said, which is good, I think, for everybody to know, because I'm in the nutrition department, and I've been chair there for about 7 years. And in our department, we do all kinds of research, a lot of collaborative work. Hi, Damaris. As I joined a department in our department. And, we span from basic science all the way out to, community and policy work. But across all those different kinds of labs, including my own, where I do a lot of work related to clinical nutrition issues for people with type 1 diabetes, the process is really the same. So if we have a student, or I have a student who emails me, I get students because of my area of work who email me and they say, I have a sister with type 1 diabetes and I want to learn more, or, they might have a personal story, or they might not, but they'll start with, I'm interested in, what you're doing, and then start a conversation from that point. So in the School of Public Health, we have a Bachelor of Science in Public Health degree, a BSPH. There's 4 different degrees. And in nutrition, we have 2 tracks, one more for, sort of more basic science, people doing pre-med, and another new track now that's more on the humanities side of things. And so really, people's interests can be broad. For that BSPH program, the process is you apply in towards the end, middle end of sophomore year for junior and senior year. But that doesn't mean that you need to wait until that formal process when you're actually trying to get into the program and get your, mentor and lined up and all of that. You can contact someone in the faculty for the department based on their interest much earlier on, even right away in freshman year. And I've certainly had that happen. And then, just like we've talked about, you start that conversation. You might end up with, like an hourly position. You might end up work study. You might end up just volunteering in a lab for a period of time. And just getting exposed, being part of a research team, just getting an idea of what that's like, and honing your interest. A lot of faculty, I know for myself, and as has been expressed, we're very interested, even though, UNC is a big school, there's a lot of undergrads, but it's really about finding that niche and having those personal relationships with faculty who love to see these really smart, creative people be inspired, start to learn. And if it turns out that their interest is more aligned with a different faculty member, that's fine. We'll help you, find that right fit and that right match if for whatever reason it turns out to not be in the particular lab where you started, as a matter of your interest or the skills you want to build, or whatever it might be. So I definitely think that even though this is a big place, really developing those personal relationships, those conversations, to help you learn, help you think, help you know how to contribute, through really that mentoring, I think is really a great opportunity. And faculty love to do that. We come to UNC often because the students here are so talented and they're so committed and want to learn. So we love it. So, for me, if I happen to not answer an email in a timely fashion, I don't at all mind, that nudge. You can resend the email in a week or 2. You can even resend it and act like you never sent it before. That works too. Or you can have that kind of little intro, just as described earlier, that just says, I know you're really busy, but I'm interested in what you do. It'd be, perhaps we could find a time to talk, or, whatever it might be. That's perfectly fine. Don't be afraid to do that. You never know. You might have sent an email to a faculty member when, for whatever reason, they were just busier than usual. And you never take that personally. Just, you can go ahead and recontact them. So, So I think that's it. I mean, it's a little bit after 8 already, and a lot of what others have said hold true for my lab and others in nutrition. And I've really enjoyed working with undergrads with the SURF program. Students have done really interesting projects, very creative stuff, and it's a joy. I mean, it's really a positive experience. So, I just welcome all of you to take advantage of the many faculty at UNC who, like me, really do love to work with you.
Thank you so much. And I want to highlight a couple of things that Dr. Meyer Davis just said. One is that, first of all, from a meta perspective, from everything that she just said and everything the faculty before her just said, one of the things that we hope to convey through this panel is how friendly and available, with a nudge sometimes, but how friendly and available faculty are, and how passionate and willing they are to work with undergraduate students. So thank you all for conveying that, and especially highlighting that at the end there, Dr. Meyer Davis. And then also, particularly with your department in nutrition and then in the School of Public Health, I appreciate you saying what you said about not being afraid to reach out to faculty even before you've gotten into those programs. I've given that advice before to undergraduates, and I'm always like, I think this is the right advice to give. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So it's nice to hear you say that. Yeah. And there are great folks in your department and advisors there, like Jonathan Ernest, and I can help give you all names, undergraduates, to connect you to people that I know there. But there are people, if you're afraid to reach out to faculty or you're not really sure which faculty to reach out to, the School of Public Health has great advisors, academic advisors essentially, or equivalent, who are willing to sit down and say, oh, you want to do this? Let me give you 3 names of people you should reach out to. So they're very actually user-friendly and helpful to students.
Yep, absolutely.
So we now have time for just general Q&A. I've asked faculty to be here until 8:15, so I'm going to let them go after 8:15. But before we go to general questions, do faculty have any last pieces of advice as far as how to reach out or tips for undergraduates finding opportunities?
I've got one, but I don't want to intrude if other people, I can't see who else is raising their hand.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, I was just going to say, if you are in a situation where you have some choice about the project or, the research that you're proposing, I definitely advise focusing more on the fit with the faculty advisor than the particular topic that you are hoping to research. I can say from my own personal experience, I had an idea about an honors thesis, and I went, as an undergrad, like, oh, here's my idea, to my favorite faculty member, and he's like, great idea, but I'm going to be on leave next year. So then I went to my second favorite professor, here's my idea, and he said, but here's my idea that I would really like you to work on. And I was devastated and thought it was going to be the worst thing in the world because it wasn't my topic. And it ended up being everything I care most about in life. So, sometimes good things happen. Sometimes you turn out to be interested in other things than you thought you did. And most importantly, at least in my opinion, if you get along with the person who you're working with, that can make even a topic you didn't think that was that interesting, it can make it really exciting. And conversely, if you insist, like, I need to work on this issue and this topic, and I don't care who it's with, sometimes that can not pan out as well.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention something. We had actually 2 students that joined our lab because they came to the Psych Neurofest, which is it's like a poster presentation of research projects, which is organized by our department, and it is specific for undergraduate students. But usually graduate students present their posters, also undergrads, but we had a lot of undergraduate students join. We also give credit for students who join these kind of meeting or conference. And there, 2 of our undergrads who joined, they saw a poster and they asked questions and they wanted to join. And at the very beginning, I just started off in 2015. So I had my graduate students and we were not sure to take any undergraduate students because we were just starting off. And so we mentioned to that undergraduate student, to come back. And she actually came back a year later or a semester later and was like, we're really interested. And we took her on, and she joined us for 2 years, and she moved on to her graduate career and in a actually collaborators lab. So, she basically continued to, contact us, and, basically it means that you shouldn't give up if you're interested in joining a certain lab either. And don't be shy if there are like research presentation conferences, meetings from different departments. Go there and talk to the person who presents the work and ask if they take undergrads as well.
And I'd like to chime in on this too a little bit. One thing to think about is this is just the beginning, just the first steps of your experience in research. So there's a lot to learn. And sometimes, when you're in a conversation with the faculty, you'll be able to start thinking about, well, why am I interested in a certain topic? And what is it that I want to learn? So give some thought to, why you're interested in whatever it is you're interested in, and what is it that you want to learn? Because this is really, just the beginning, and all kinds of things can evolve. Your interests can shift because you're thinking and learning, and your skills will build. You could go in different directions. So I think having some flexibility when you enter the conversation with the faculty member along those lines is really helpful, because sometimes it does take, some back and forth. For students who come into my lab for the 2-year BSPH program and they're doing an honors thesis, really our discussions the whole first semester, they're working in my lab and they're doing various things that need to be done for various studies that are going on. But I'll have conversations with them over time that really are just about, what are your interests? What do you want to learn? What are your career goals? What are your academic goals? And then, you kind of work through and come up with a project. So I would just encourage everybody, when you start conversations with faculty, be open to listening to them, to thinking about what you want to learn, and how it might go. Just have that flexibility in your thinking, because you never know, something very cool and often does emerge that you weren't expecting.
Dr. Lindsay, were you going to say something a second ago?
Yeah, so I was just going to reiterate that a little bit more, and also just add to it, start early. If you think that research is something that you really want to give it a try, try to reach out to the professors in your first year or second year at UNC. So that will give you a little bit more time to find the right fit, but also to have time to explore the project, to learn about the lab, to learn the techniques, and then to contribute in a meaningful way to the research that's going on. I always emphasize that, especially for the type of research that requires data collection, it takes much longer than you think. So the earlier you can start being involved with it, the more you are going to be able to contribute and to learn, which at the end is the most important part of it.
Yeah, thank you. I think what we're hearing from a lot of these comments is really the importance of that mentorship and relationship. And if you have to sort of balance things, obviously you want both shared interest and sort of the content to be there and the relationship, but the relationship in some ways has a little bit more weight in the support and the mentorship that somebody can give you. I think especially as an undergraduate, when you're a graduate student, if you get a master's or especially a PhD, you really want both those things to be there, but you also have more kind of autonomy as a graduate student to sort of follow your own line of research. As an undergraduate, I think learning about the process and hearing and getting good advice and support from a mentor is more important than being able to do the exact perfect thing that you want as an undergraduate, because most people as an undergraduate haven't quite figured out how to do it well anyway. So you have to kind of get the experience of how to do the research, and then in graduate studies or later on you can more focus specifically on the content that you want.
Yeah, can I jump in and say one quick thing about that?
Sure.
I was just going to say that question that you asked at the beginning that the students answered in the chat about why do undergraduate research. People had all sorts of great points in there, but one point that I don't think anybody mentioned that those of us who are on the other side of our undergraduate experience recognize, but it's hard to recognize at the time, is that one of the big reasons to do undergraduate research is that it throws you into the scrum of actually figuring stuff out, which is an incredibly messy process and stressful and, you know, just confusing. And it's navigating that confusion and the messiness of real sources or real information that doesn't fit your expectations, that is really different from the kind of curated experience that you get in a typical classroom. And it is stressful, and that's part of why it's a valuable experience, but you know, that stress also, like other kinds of stress, makes you resilient and gives you a set of skills that you wouldn't have if you hadn't exposed yourself to that chaos and had to navigate it, find your way through it, try to make order, you know, amidst it. So I think that's another really good reason to do undergraduate research that sort of fits with this flexibility theme that we have been talking about.
Yeah, all the best things in life are hard, right? We don't get a lot from easy experiences. Before I forget, just because there's a question that has gone up the list, so before I forget it, this is for Dr. Meyer-Davis. A first-year student says she's very interested in the nutrition program and hope to start research there. How often is it that students who are not yet in the program, how often are they able to work in a research-based lab there?
Okay. You know, I don't know an exact number as a way to answer that, but you know, I know it happens, and there's no reason that it can't happen, for sure. So, you know, I would just encourage you to. Let's see, I have this go up in the chat. What was the student's name?
Penelope.
Oh, Penelope. Okay. I was about to use the name. I didn't know the name. Anyway, Penelope. So I would just encourage you to, you know, look at the website for faculty interest, and, you know, just go ahead and email them. But actually, you know, see, this is an example of a connection. Just because you happen to be here tonight, I happen to be here tonight, and we're having this little exchange. Honestly, I really would welcome you to just email me and, you know, send me a little bit about what your interests are. And then, you know, we can go from there. And, you know, then I can say, well, you know, here are 4 people in our department who are doing work that I think you'll be interested in. And then I can connect you and say, dear Linda, I just talked with this, you know, first year student, Penelope, there it is, Mewborn, and you might have a common interest, something like that. So, so this as an example of how that happens, so that you can get engaged apart from, you know, the specific degree program, and just get that conversation going and start getting some experiences. So I'd be happy to get you connected up and see what happens. And sometimes it's a matter of volunteering, you know, 5 or 8 hours a week, or even less, or planning on doing something like that the following semester or over the summer. There's lots of different ways that you can get, that you can go ahead and get involved. So yeah, just send me an email and I'll connect you up.
See, Penelope, come to a workshop, get connected to the chair of the nutrition department. Boom. We're making things happen. We're making things happen tonight.
Right, it's all good.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Other questions, just opening it up to any general questions. Besides what's for dinner, I'm kind of curious now. What's you're getting for dinner, Dr. Meyer-Davis?
Well, actually, my husband just brought in a bowl of bison sweet potato chili that's left over.
Nice.
We're eating late because we both had late stuff going on. Yep. Carrots and possibly ice cream for dessert.
Nice, nice. Olivia, for the workshop, I think I was just mentioning this workshop that Penelope came and she was able to get connected to a chair of the department with Dr. Meyer-Davis, if that's for your question. Other questions? All right. Well, I'm not gonna push us to 8:30 if folks don't have other questions. I think we had phenomenal advice. I've given other workshops through our department. My colleague Boots often does these workshops, and so this is my first time doing this. And I only know a handful of the faculty here, and I've been just super pleased to hear from you all, and super grateful for you spending your time at the dinner / bedtime / for me already getting sleepy time of 8 to 8:30. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for your wonderful advice. Thank you for your wisdom and your support for undergraduate students. Again, I hope that the participants are seeing just how friendly so many of their faculty are. Thank you also for the ambassadors for being here and sharing your time tonight. Brett just mentioned we are doing, send him a quick message. Brett, put your email in there. If you're interested in doing Wikipedia racing with undergraduate ambassadors, a little fun event, York22 at live.unc.edu. Email him and he can hook you up with a fun undergraduate research event this weekend. Again, I'm gonna just sort of, let me show the last slide. I think there you go. So my our website is there. Again, my email is in the chat as well, and you all should have it from the workshop notices. So please don't hesitate, participants, to reach out to me and make an appointment to chat more about your research interest. And thank you, Paul and Beth, for adding your emails as well. All right, good night. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, sure, feel free to email.
Yeah. All right, thank you all so much. Have a wonderful night.
Thanks for hosting.
All righty, take care. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Night, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.